the most powerful nation on Earth just dropped 2 atomic bombs and won the greatest war in human history. But America faced a terrifying question that kept its leaders awake at night. What happens when 12 million soldiers come home to an economy that has no jobs for them? Economists predicted disaster. They feared another Great Depression, maybe worse than the first. Factories that built tanks and bombers would shut down. Unemployment would explode. The American dream would die before it even began for millions of returning heroes. One senator warned that if the Pacific War ended quickly, the United States would find itself largely unprepared to overcome unemployment on a large scale. But something unexpected happened instead. Something extraordinary. Within just 10 years, America didn't just avoid economic collapse. It became the richest nation in human history. The 1950s saw an economic explosion so powerful that even 70 years later, politicians still talk about those golden years as the peak of American prosperity. Unemployment dropped to record lows. Families bought homes, cars, and televisions at rates never seen before. The middle class expanded like never before or since. How did this happen? How did America go from the brink of economic disaster to the greatest boom in world history? The answer lies in 5 critical decisions made in the aftermath of World War II. 5 choices that transformed not just America, but shaped the entire modern world. These weren't accidents. They weren't luck. They were deliberate, bold, visionary decisions made by leaders who understood that winning the war was only half the battle. In today's video, we're going to reveal the 5 decisions that made America rich after World War II. These policies created over 17 million new jobs, quadrupled automobile sales, and built a middle class that became the envy of the world. But more importantly, understanding these decisions will show you how nations actually build wealth, power, and prosperity in the wake of destruction. Let's dive in. Decision number 1. June 1944. While American soldiers were still fighting on the beaches of Normandy, President Franklin Roosevelt signed a document that would change the future of millions. It was called the Servicemen's Readjustment Act, but history remembers it as the GI Bill, and it was the first masterstroke in America's post-war economic strategy. Here's what made the GI Bill revolutionary. Instead of just giving veterans a pension and sending them home, America made a massive bet on education and opportunity. The bill offered returning soldiers free college tuition, low-interest home loans, unemployment benefits, and job training. Critics at the time said it would be a disaster. They claimed veterans would abuse the system, avoid work, and waste taxpayers' money. They couldn't have been more wrong. Within 7 years, almost 8 million veterans took advantage of the GI Bill's benefits. Nearly 2.5 million went to colleges and universities. Another 3.5 million received job training. The impact was staggering. In 1947, veterans made up 49% of all college students in America. Think about that. Almost half of everyone in college was a veteran being educated on government money. These weren't rich kids from wealthy families. These were working-class men who would never have dreamed of going to college before the war. The GI Bill transformed them into engineers, scientists, doctors, teachers, and business leaders. The program produced 14 Nobel Prize winners, 3 Supreme Court justices, and 3 presidents. It created the most educated workforce in human history. But the GI Bill did more than just educate veterans. It also helped them buy homes. The government guaranteed loans for veterans, which meant banks were willing to lend money even to people who had no savings. Veterans could buy a house with 0 money down. Between 1945 and 1956, veterans purchased 20% of all new homes built in America. Entire suburbs sprang up almost overnight to house them. The economic impact was massive. College graduates earned higher salaries, which meant they paid more taxes. They started businesses, created jobs, and drove innovation. Home ownership created stable communities and gave families wealth they could pass down to their children. The GI Bill didn't just help veterans adjust to civilian life. It created the foundation for the most prosperous middle class the world had ever seen. The numbers tell the story. The government spent about $14.5 billion on the education and training portions of the GI Bill, but the return on that investment was extraordinary. The increase in federal income tax revenue from better educated, higher earning veterans more than paid for the entire program. America had discovered a powerful truth. Investing in your people's education and skills doesn't cost money in the long run. It makes money. Decision number 2. The Marshall Plan. Creating trading partners. While the GI Bill was transforming America at home, American leaders were looking overseas and seeing a different kind of problem. Europe was in ruins. Cities had been bombed into rubble. Factories were destroyed. People were starving. And in the chaos, communism was spreading. On June 5, 1947, Secretary of State George Marshall stood at Harvard University and announced a plan that would reshape the entire world. The Marshall Plan, as it became known, offered massive American aid to help rebuild Europe's shattered economies. It was the second brilliant decision that made America rich. Here's what made the Marshall Plan genius. It wasn't just charity. It was strategic economic planning. American leaders understood something crucial. You can't sell products to people who are too poor to buy them. Europe before the war had been one of America's biggest trading partners. If Europe stayed poor and broken, American factories would have no one to sell to. The economy would collapse. So between 1948 and 1952, America sent $13.3 billion to Western Europe. That's equivalent to more than $220 billion today. The money went to 16 countries, with Britain, France, and West Germany receiving the largest shares. The aid paid for food, fuel, raw materials, machinery, and industrial equipment. The results were spectacular. European economies grew at rates never seen before. Industrial production soared. Trade between countries increased dramatically. But here's the key. As Europe recovered, they bought American goods. Lots of American goods. The Marshall Plan created stable, prosperous trading partners who needed American products and could afford to pay for them. The Marshall Plan also had another benefit that American leaders clearly understood. By making Europe prosperous and stable, America was building a wall against communism. Countries with growing economies and rising living standards don't turn to communist revolutions. The Marshall Plan helped keep Western Europe firmly in the American economic and political orbit during the Cold War. Critics at the time said the Marshall Plan was throwing good money after bad. They said Europe would waste it, or that America couldn't afford it. But those critics missed the bigger picture. The Marshall Plan wasn't an expense. It was an investment that paid off through increased trade, economic growth, and global stability. It also established America as the leader of the free world's economy. The lesson here is profound. In the aftermath of war, America didn't turn inward. Instead, American leaders understood that their prosperity was connected to global prosperity. By helping others rebuild, America created the conditions for its own economic boom. It's one of the smartest economic decisions any nation has ever made. Decision number 3. The Bretton Woods system, controlling global money. While soldiers were still fighting World War II, American economic planners were already designing the post-war financial order. In July 1944, representatives from 44 countries gathered in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. What they created there became the third pillar of America's post-war economic dominance. The Bretton Woods Agreement established a new international monetary system. Here's how it worked. The US dollar would be directly tied to gold at $35 per ounce. Every other major currency would then be tied to the dollar at fixed exchange rates. This made the dollar the world's reserve currency. If you wanted to trade internationally, you needed dollars. Why was this so important? Because America held 3/4 of the world's gold supply at the end of World War II. No other country had enough gold to back their currency as a global standard, so the world had to use dollars. This gave America enormous economic and political power. Think about what this meant in practice. When France wanted to buy oil from Saudi Arabia, they had to use dollars. When Japan wanted to import steel from Brazil, they needed dollars. When Germany wanted to rebuild its factories, they required dollars to buy machinery. The entire global economy ran on American currency. This system created massive demand for dollars. Countries around the world needed to hold dollar reserves to conduct international trade. This meant they were essentially lending money to America at low interest rates. America could run larger budget deficits than other countries because the world needed to hold dollars. It was an extraordinary privilege. The Bretton Woods system also created 2 new international institutions, the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. Both were headquartered in Washington and heavily influenced by American policy. These institutions helped manage the global economy and provided loans to countries in financial trouble, further extending American economic influence. The system lasted until 1971, when President Nixon ended the dollar's convertibility to gold. But even after Bretton Woods collapsed, the dollar remained the world's dominant reserve currency. That advantage, created in 1944, continues to benefit America today. It's one reason why America can borrow money more cheaply than other countries, and why the US economy remains central to global finance. The Bretton Woods system was American economic strategy at its finest. By making the dollar the foundation of international trade, America ensured that its currency would be in constant demand worldwide. This decision didn't just make America rich, it made America essential to the entire global economy. Decision number 4. The Interstate Highway System, connecting the nation. In 1956, President Dwight Eisenhower signed the Federal Aid Highway Act, launching what would become the largest public works project in American history. The Interstate Highway System became the fourth decision that transformed the American economy. Eisenhower had seen Germany's Autobahn during World War II and understood the military and economic value of a modern highway network. The act authorized $25 billion to build 41,000 miles of high-speed, limited-access highways connecting every major city in America. The federal government would pay 90% of construction costs, with states covering the remaining 10%. The economic impact was immediate and enormous. Construction of the interstate system created hundreds of thousands of jobs. Workers poured concrete, built bridges, moved earth, and manufactured materials. The construction boom lasted for decades, providing steady employment and injecting billions of dollars into the economy. But the real economic revolution came from what the highways enabled. Suddenly, goods could move across the country faster and cheaper than ever before. Trucks could travel from coast to coast in days instead of weeks. Manufacturing companies could locate factories anywhere and still reach markets efficiently. This dramatically reduced transportation costs and increased productivity. The interstate system also transformed where and how Americans lived. Suburbs exploded as people could now commute long distances to work. Entire new industries emerged to serve highway travelers: motels, gas stations, restaurants, and shopping centers. The automobile industry boomed as families bought cars to take advantage of the new roads. Commerce flourished in ways never before possible. Perishable goods like fresh produce could reach distant markets quickly. Regional economies became integrated into one national market. Just-in-time manufacturing became feasible. A company in California could sell directly to customers in Maine with reliable, fast delivery. The numbers tell the story of transformation. By the 1960s, the interstate system was moving more than 20% of all traffic on less than 2% of the nation's roads. Trucks transported everything from food to electronics, creating a mobile, flexible economy. The highways connected the port of Savannah to markets across the Southeast and Midwest, enabling explosive growth in international trade. The interstate highway system cost over $129 billion to build, a staggering sum, but the economic returns were many times greater. Studies have shown that every dollar spent on the interstate system generated several dollars in economic growth. It's considered one of the most successful government investments in history. The interstate system did more than just move goods and people. It physically unified America into a single economic market. A business in one state could compete in another. Workers could move to where jobs were. Ideas and innovations spread faster. America became more productive, more connected, and more prosperous because of these highways. Decision number 5. Defense spending and technology investment. The fifth decision that made America rich was how the government used defense spending to drive technological innovation. This might seem counterintuitive, but military research and development became one of the most important engines of economic growth in post-war America. During World War II, the government had poured money into scientific research. Radar, jet engines, nuclear energy, computers, and countless other technologies. After the war, instead of shutting down this research, America doubled down on it. The Cold War provided justification for continued massive investment in military technology. But here's what made this brilliant. Military research created technologies that transformed civilian industries. The computer industry was born from military research projects. The internet started as a Defense Department project called ARPANET. Jet engines developed for military aircraft revolutionized commercial aviation. Satellite technology, GPS, microwave ovens, and even duct tape all came from military research. The government wasn't just buying weapons. It was funding basic research at universities, creating contracts for private companies to develop new technologies, and pushing the boundaries of science and engineering. This created entire new industries and millions of high-paying jobs for scientists, engineers, and technicians. Defense spending also provided stable, long-term funding for American manufacturing. Companies like Boeing, Lockheed, and General Electric grew enormous on defense contracts. These companies employed hundreds of thousands of workers at good wages. The skills and technologies developed for military purposes often transferred to civilian products, making American industry more innovative and competitive. The space program, driven by Cold War competition with the Soviet Union, became another massive technology driver. The Apollo program alone employed over 400,000 people at its peak. It drove advances in computers, materials science, telecommunications, and countless other fields. Technologies developed for space found their way into consumer products, medical devices, and industrial processes. This pattern of government-funded research leading to private sector innovation became a cornerstone of American economic strength. Silicon Valley itself owes much of its existence to Defense Department contracts and research funding. The most profitable and innovative American companies today often trace their technological roots back to government-funded military or space research. The lesson here is that government investment in cutting-edge technology and research can create enormous economic returns. The military provided a vehicle for this investment that had political support during the Cold War. Whether developing new weapons or reaching the moon, these programs pushed American science and industry forward, creating the technological foundation for decades of economic leadership. Conclusion. So there you have it. The 5 decisions that made America rich after World War II. The GI Bill that invested in human capital and created the most educated workforce in history. The Marshall Plan that rebuilt Europe and created prosperous trading partners. The Bretton Woods system that made the dollar the foundation of global finance. The interstate highway system that connected the nation into a single efficient market. And strategic defense spending that drove technological innovation across the entire economy. What's remarkable about these decisions is how they work together. Educated veterans started businesses that used the highways to reach customers. Those businesses exported products to Europe, earning dollars that reinforced America's financial dominance. Defense spending funded research that created new industries, which hired those educated workers and used those highways to distribute products. These weren't accidents or lucky breaks. They were deliberate, strategic choices made by leaders who understood how to build lasting prosperity. They invested in people through education. They created international markets through foreign aid. They built infrastructure to connect the nation. They funded research to drive innovation. And they structured the global financial system to America's advantage. The result was the greatest economic boom in human history. Between 1945 and 1960, America's economy more than doubled in size. 17 million new jobs were created. The middle class expanded dramatically. Living standards rose faster than ever before or since. America became not just the richest nation on earth, but the dominant economic superpower for generations to come. The lessons from these 5 decisions remain relevant today. Nations that invest in education, build modern infrastructure, support technological innovation, and create stable trading relationships tend to prosper. Those that don't fall behind. The choices made in the aftermath of World War II didn't just shape the 1950s. They shaped the entire second half of the 20th century and continue to influence the global economy today. That's the story of how America turned the potential disaster of 12 million returning soldiers into the greatest economic opportunity in history. 5 bold decisions. 5 game-changing policies. 1 extraordinary outcome.